Hello, welcome to another GoJS Intermediate tutorial. This video will explain and demonstrate the graduated panel, used to draw regular tick marks and/or text labels along the stroke of the main child shape element. Using GoJS requires programming in JavaScript and familiarity with HTML and CSS. Additionally, this video assumes you understand the basics of GoJS, which are covered in the GoJS Beginner Videos series. Graduated panels are used to draw regular tick marks and/or text labels along the stroke of the main child shape element. Graduated panels can be used for many purposes, such as timelines, thermometers, instrument gauges, and rulers. Similar to auto and spot panels, graduated panels must have two or more elements. These elements must be either shapes or text blocks. By default, the main shape element will be the first element of the panel. This can be changed by setting the isPanelMain property to be true on an element inside the graduated panel. Any shape, including custom geometries, can be used as the main shape or as a tick mark shape of a graduated panel. Let's start with an empty graduated panel. We'll add two shape elements. The first one, the main element, will be the shape upon which the tick marks and text labels will be added. This shape will be a horizontal line, 300 pixels long. The next shape represents the tick marks on the graduated panel. We'll make it a vertical line, 10 pixels tall. We'll also set the background of the grid panel so it is pickable. Load the page. We see a horizontal line with 10 tick marks on it. Understanding why there are 10 tick marks by default requires us to understand some graduated panel properties. First, we must understand what values this graduated panel spans. This range is given by the graduated min and graduated max properties. These properties denote the range of values represented by the panel. By default, the graduated min property is 0, and the graduated max property is 100. This means, by default, the graduated panel represents values between 0 and 100. Next, we must understand the graduated tick unit property. This is how often a tick mark should be created. The default value for this property is 10. This means, given a graduated panel that represents values 0 to 100 by default, 11 ticks will be created for it, since a tick will be made at value 0. So, looking back at our example, the 300 pixel long horizontal line is representing values 0 to 100, and the tick marks on it are created every 10 units. Let's make this clearer by adding some text beneath our ticks. Add a new element to the panel, a text block. By default, the text of this text block will be the value it corresponds with for the graduated panel. We'll define its segment offset property to a new go.point value of 0.20. This way, the text will appear 20 pixels below the main shape element. Reload the page. Now it's even clearer that each tick mark represents 10 units along the panel, and that the panel spans values between 0 and 100. Let's change a few things. First, let's set the graduated min and graduated max panel properties. We'll set the graduated min property to 0, which is the default value, but change the graduated max property to 200. We'll also set the graduated tick unit to 20. Now, reload the page. While the shapes appear as before, we can see by the text block labels on the ticks that the graduated panel now spans values between 0 and 200, and each tick represents 20 units instead of 10. One may change the base value that is marked with a tick by changing the graduated tick base property. By default, this is 0, but watch what happens if we change it to, say, 15. When we load the page, we see the ticks appear a bit differently, and the labels are now centered around 15. Basically, the origin for the scale has shifted slightly, even though the end values remain the same. There will always be a tick mark at the graduated tick base if that value is within the range of values covered by the graduated panel. We'll change graduated tick base back to 0, the default value. Let's see how modifying the interval property affects how ticks are laid out. Let's set our graduated tick unit property to 10, so there are, by default, 20 ticks instead of 10. To achieve the same old look we had with our tick marks before, we must set the interval property of our shape and text block to 2, so these ticks still only appear every 20 units. We're going to add another text block soon, so let's change the look of this one. Set its stroke property to blue, and give it a bit of a smaller font. We'll also make these ticks closer to the scale. Change the segment offset property to a new go.point value of 0.10. Reload the page. We see the text for these ticks is small, blue, and close to the scale. Let's add a new text block element. We'll make these text blocks appear every 40 units along the scale. So we'll set the interval property to 4. These text blocks should appear a bit farther away from the scale than the other ones. So set the segment offset property to a new go.point value of 0.20. We'll also give these text blocks a bold 12-point font. Now, reload the page. Things look good. Note how the values that would be marked by both text blocks are only marked with the bold ones. That's because its interval property is set to 4, while the blue text block interval property is set to 2. In such cases where ticks would be drawn at the same place, the one with the greater interval property is drawn. We can also change the figure of the main shape of our graduated panel. Let's change ours to the preset figure curve 1. To get an even curve, we'll also set the height property of our main shape to 300, the same as the width property. Reload the page. We can see the scale is now a curved line, and the tick marks are still drawn evenly along the curve. If we want our text blocks to orient themselves a particular way, we can set the segment orientation property to a value of go.link.orient. For example, if we want our bold text blocks to be oriented along the curve, we can set the segment orientation property to go.link.orientAlong. Load the page. We can see the bold text blocks are angled along the curve now. There are other ways we could choose to orient the text block, but for now, this is enough. That's it for this video. To learn more, visit the intro pages on panels and table panels, or read the full documentation on gojs.net. Head over to gojs.net to see hundreds of samples, read more about GoJS features on the intro pages, or peruse the full API documentation. Sign up for an unlimited free trial, and you'll get 30 days of developer-to-developer support for free.